Welcome, friends, once again. It's always a joy to be in this Satsang on Thursdays when we bring some of the Master's teachings and also the Bhagwad Gita, and we study the principles and see the different ways of how to practice in our daily life. Today, I'm going to talk on a subject which is, for quite some time, I was thinking about it, and this is the subject of fear. How to transcend the fear, how to deal with fear, because fear is such a universal emotion. Sometime or the other everybody I think has felt some kind of fear or the other, maybe the fear of illness, fear of death, fear of failure, or fear of getting misunderstood by someone. So fear can come in different forms, but how and what are the things, what are the principles that Yogananda is talking about, and what is Bhagwad Gita is saying? That is what we are going to talk about. So let me first share with what Yogananda has said, although he has not talked about it fear directly in this stanza that I am reading before you, but he does give us a way to transcend it, how to do it. He says that by seeking out evil, by being negative, and by affirming to yourself negative thoughts, you see this world as a forest of fear. But by seeking goodness, by being good and affirming good, you see this world as a garden of beauty. So it's like a journey, you can say, from the forest of fear to a garden of beauty. And a forest of fear, probably he was using it as a poetic expression, because fear can come in so many forms. So we create a forest for ourselves. And how do we do that? And then he quotes from Bhagwad Gita also. He says Bhagwad Gita teaches that he who thinks negatively and beholds evil in the world is the enemy of his self, and the self acts as his enemy. Here the self he has kept in the capital S. And he who beholds only goodness, he says, is a friend to his self, and the self acts as his friend. If you are your own enemy, picking up evil from everywhere, your true self will be your enemy. And if you befriend yourself by absorbing good qualities from everywhere, your true self will be your friend. So in this world, seek only that which is good. Do that which is good. Constantly seek God instead of indulging in negative thoughts and actions, and you will find peace of mind and happiness in your life. Now, let us come to this thought, friends, for a while, because here he is saying that fear, just like all these negative emotions, fear is also a feeling or emotion which is a negative, just like hatred or anger or jealousy or so many different negative emotions. They just cross through our hearts and minds at different times. But he is not picking all of them one by one, but he is giving a kind of a remedy which applies to all. He says that forest of fear we are creating for ourselves. And the reason is, he says, that because we are seeking evil, or we are not seeking goodness, or we are not affirming goodness. And to the degree we are not seeking goodness and affirming goodness, to that degree we are getting affected by the evil in the world. But he's in one of the paragraphs, he also says that God is the absolute goodness. But he had to create evil just to create the contrast on which we can see the goodness. And that is why he says, yes, evil had to be created, but evil has no other purpose but just to give you the value of goodness, just to show us the importance of goodness. And that is what we need to focus upon. And if we talk from the perspective of neuroscience, friends, scientists have also found out that there is a kind of negativity bias in our minds. And neuroscientists have explained that this is something. Why does it happen? Because they say that it is because the negative memories, they are stored in our brain for long term, as well as the recall is also very quick as compared to the good memories. Now, why does nature do that? because scientists have found out that their survival of the body and survival of our in a way, the survival is the main thing for which the human body and the humanity, you may say, when it is at stake, then the negative memories, they always come on the forefront quickly, so that whenever the survival is at stake, you can take a remedial action and you can protect yourself. Because had it not been that way, then the memory, if the negative impressions don't come to our memory quickly, then maybe our life may get endangered, and we may just our survival may be at stake. And that is why the nature has created or programmed our mind that way. And so many times it happens that when something unusual happens, it is very natural that our mind first gives us the negative things, what may go wrong, or what may not go right, or what may, you may just have a bad time. Or this is because the programming of the mind has happened through ages, and who knows, maybe through incarnations, and those memories, they remain in the mind, so that they immediately come to the recall, so that we can take the next step to protect ourselves. But on the spiritual front, friends, if you see, mind is only a gadget that has been given to us, and we have to create. At many places, Yogananda said that you have to remind yourself every day that you are not this body, you are not this mind, and this mind and body is just like an outer layer which has been given to you, through which you are working. Just like a driver is driving a car, so you are driving this body, and you are also using this mind like a computer to undertake many tasks. But you are not your mind, you are eternal, you are that light itself. At another place he says that, and you need not get affected by what your mind tells you. At another place, Yogananda says that you will have to learn to create a barrier between the real you, which is the soul, and your body and mind. Otherwise, these body and mind, to the degree they will affect you, you will not be able to conquer. That is what we have to understand, that conquering the body and the mind. Now, this is something on the spiritual front. When we do it, it may look difficult, and it is difficult to some extent, but it can be done, just like all these great masters have done. If we take the example of our own masters, starting from Lahadi Mahashaya to Yogananda ji and his disciples also, they all had to go beyond this negativity bias of their mind, one can say. And just try to recall some of these incidents of these great masters, and through their own example, although they were avatars, they had already conquered the mind, but they were just showing that yes, mind will be having this tendency, and we need to go beyond it. So how does that happen? If you see Lahadi Mahashaya, when he was in the Kumbh Mela, and he saw this saint who was looking like an ignorant sadhu, and who was more looking like an hypocrite, and he felt that what is he doing here in the Kumbh Mela? And suddenly he saw that there was Babaji besides him, and he was washing his utensils. And immediately Lahadi Mahashaya just greets him, and he says, "Babaji, what are you doing?" And he had already read the thought in the mind of Lahadi Mahashaya. He said, "Yes, I'm washing his utensils, and after some time I'll be washing his clothes. And I'm doing this," he said, "because to rejuvenate this virtue in my mind of humility," that he says, and I'm serving the ignorant as well as the enlightened sadhus alike, so that this quality of humility keeps on growing in me, which is loved by the God the most. And just imagine Babaji saying that I am working on the quality of humility, and I am working, and he says I am serving ignorant sadhus as well as the enlightened ones alike. And Lahadi Mahashaya immediately saw the point that the criticism, which was a kind of negativity, which was forcing him to see that person as different from others, he immediately understood the point. Same way Yukteswar ji, when he goes to Kumbh Mela and he says the same, that there are so many other people, I don't see that they are, why they come to Kumbh Mela, they don't feel like spiritually enlightened. And again, Babaji tells him that he addresses him as Swamiji, or maybe he addresses at that time as a child. He said, this world is a mixture of, he said, sand and sugar. And why don't you become like a wise ant who picks up the sugar and leaves the sand? And he said, because of the fault of few or a little or some number of people, why to judge the whole? That is how he tells him. And similarly, in Yogananda's case, if you see, when there was this meeting with the Lahadi Mahashay and he was crossing this Howrah station and he saw some devotees, those who were singing violently and chanting maybe a little loudly, and he thought for a while, this criticism came in his mind, what is the point of this loud chanting? And immediately Master Mahashay read the thoughts in his mind and he said, a little Mahashay, don't you feel that whenever we take God's name, it is always sweeter the way it is taken? So you see that criticism, all these great masters, they never came to show us their own greatness, but they were reminding us that yes, you will have to go beyond this trait of the mind where our own mind will suggest us or try to pick up the negativity and may not focus on the goodness, and that is how you have to train it. And so there are certain ways which I felt how we can do that, and Yogananda suggests some of these ways, and we can say that this is a 6-point steps we can say how we do it. The first thing he says is that seek goodness. So if we enumerate some of these things, he says seek goodness, taste goodness, and then adore goodness, and also affirm goodness, receive goodness, and then finally you will be able to apply goodness. This is how I have kept them in that order. And what do we mean by seeking goodness? He says that just like a honey bee is always looking for the flowers. He's always looking for the good qualities, or it is always looking at the flowers so that it can take the essence out of that. And he said some of us are like flies. For a moment they come to the god, they get attracted by the honey, but immediately something attracts their senses and they just flit to that side, and then they, even if it is unwholesome, he says that, but still they never realize that they should have been like honey bee, which will always go to the flowers come what may. And that is how he said our mind has to be. And we sang this chant that if I can be like that bee who is devotionally always attracted to the divine, then no matter whatever evil is we are surrounded with, we will always come to the goodness. And at another time he has also mentioned that we cannot deny evil. He said yes, God knows that because he has created evil, so it's not that he doesn't know about evil, otherwise it will be a very ignorant God. He said, but you don't have to focus on that, you don't have to seek that, only seek goodness. And that there is a very beautiful story with the Pandavas, and when they were going in the forest, and they immediately saw in the forest a very diseased dog, and this dog was having flies all over, and there was a very foul smell coming out of that dog, and there was hardly anything which was attractive about that scene. And since they were all under the tutelage of Krishna, so they immediately put this question to Krishna that you always tell us to focus on goodness, but we can't see any goodness in this dog. And Krishna immediately pointed to them that don't you see the teeth of this dog? They are so shiny and bright and white. And immediately Pandavas realized that yes, the teeth of the dogs was very much unaffected, irrespective of how its body was. And that is how, you see, Krishna is telling us, as if he was reminding the Pandavas to each time focus on the goodness. In fact, today when I was meditating, this thought came that yes, this satsang is happening, and yes, the background is fuzzy, and but why is my mind going to the background? That's a very I'm focusing on the bad part, but there are so many other things which are happening good today. The audio is clear, the energization exercise led by Pradnya beautifully, and the internet connection is fine, so why can't I focus on the good things that they are happening? That is how probably we have to train our mind, because in every situation you will see, as Babaji is saying, it is a mixture of sand and sugar. So we have to train our mind that way. So first thing is seeking, and secondly he said, taste and adore the noble qualities that you see in your fellow human beings. Now it is easy to see God in a beautiful scenery, or you may say, wow, this is a beautiful weather God you have given to us today, or it's a beautiful sunset I am seeing. But we forget sometimes that the beautiful human qualities which we encounter in our everyday life, they are also expression of God. And they, when we taste them, Yogananda said, taste them and adore them. Because through humanity, through our friends or through the people around us, those human qualities, if they are of peace, if they are of love, if they are of harmony, if they are of goodness, he said, not only taste them, but adore them. Maybe we need to appreciate the good qualities in others when we see them. And at another place, Swami said that when we see goodness in others, not only they become good, but we also become good in that moment. And also, if it is a continual practice, we both improve in that regard. So you see, tasting, adoring, seeking, and then he says, affirm goodness in yourself too. Now, there always, sometimes we become so much critical of ourselves, and we see, oh, there are so many negative qualities in me. I don't think I can really progress in this lifetime, or I can go beyond. And Yogananda said, never think like that. He said, even if you have qualities, bad qualities, or any evil traits, even if they are as deep as the ocean or as high as the stars, he said, still never affirm those evil traits in you. He said, okay, watch them, observe them, but always affirm that I am a child of God, and no matter whatever degree these evil qualities that I can see in myself, but I will always keep affirming that this goodness, the light of goodness, will one day dissolve all these darkness of evil qualities in myself. He says that no matter how big or how much are the evil traits in us, but when we identify with that, when we say that, oh, this is a quality, I don't think I can get over it, he says we are actually desecrating the name of God, or desecrating the image of God in us, because he is untainted. He is always that light which can never be tainted. So he said, why to do that? Even if you see it, but always affirm goodness. And then he comes to a very important point. He says that receiving the light, now all these things which you will be doing will become better and better when you will receive the light of goodness in yourself in deep meditation. So when we do a deep meditation, always focus at this point between the eyebrows and try to visualize the light. Even if you are not able to see the true light of the spiritual eye, one can visualize the light and feel that through that window, this light is pouring inside us. It is doing it is removing the darkness of our mind. It is cleansing us. We are becoming a pure vessel. And then comes the most important part, which is the application. Now, after these 5 steps, only we will get the courage as well as the ability to apply this in our daily life. Because when the evil affects us personally, or something happens to us, then sometimes we are on the shaky ground. And now I want to just read from the Bhagwad Gita itself, where Swamiji is saying that why this evil will be a part of our life. Not only it is going to be a part of our life, but he says also it will be something that we will have to deal with almost daily. And he says in the shloka that let man uplift himself by his own effort and let him not debase himself. Indeed, one's self is his own greatest friend, or if he so chooses, his own greatest enemy. So he's putting the same thing in his words there. But why he's saying that an effort is required? All these things, the 5 things that we have discussed, seeking goodness, tasting goodness, adoring goodness, and also receiving and affirming goodness, this is all fine, but he says the application will be also, we have to take it to the next stage when you see that something bad happens or some evil strikes you. How? He says when others treat you unkindly or unfairly or even cruelly. Now just see the degrees there. And he said this will happen all the time. People will treat us sometimes unkindly, unfairly, or even cruelly. He said, make it a definite point never to react with emotion, never strike back, never complain, and even never resist. Now that seems very difficult. Out of ego consciousness, either defensively or aggressively. Now that really becomes a testing ground for us. And then he does explain that sometimes a wrong must be countered with the right, but even when duty calls you to such action, conduct yourself in such a way as to ensure that your own attitude is ever impersonal. Now let's try to understand, because we are considering the subject of fear. And most of the time, fear can come to us in different ways, but when people treat us, he says, harshly or cruelly or unkindly or even unfairly, and in that moment, if we become fearful, it is only because of that we react emotionally in order to protect ourselves. This is because that negativity bias of the mind comes and the amygdala starts firing, and as a result we go into a protective mode. We are not able to create the barrier between our own mind and with our real self, which is always eternal, which can never die. And because of that connection with the mind and because of going into that protection mode, we react emotionally. And what we have to train ourselves with is that even if something happens like that, he said, never strike back, even defensively or aggressively. Not only he says we don't have to strike back, but never even complain and never even resist out of ego consciousness, and just keep it impersonal. He said yes, and sometimes it could be important. If something is happening to us, it is I think fine to just say the point that okay, I feel it this way. But if we are not getting emotionally entangled there and just keep it on the impersonal front, not to see the person who is doing or bringing that thing to us, not connecting with him or her on personal level, but just to see that okay, yes, this energy is coming to me, but let me just stay calm about it. Let me not react emotionally. Let me not even complain about it. I can say my point, whatever it is, on an impersonal level. And that will only come when all those 5 things that we have discussed before that we will be able to practice, because application cannot come unless we are able to receive and seek goodness and also affirm goodness in ourselves. So it becomes kind of a cycle. We practice and we apply. We apply and we get more strength to practice. So sadhana and the testing will always go hand in hand. And then he says the reward is equally great, and Bhagwad Gita tells you about what will happen. He says with that practice you will become a supreme yogi. He said you will remain unshakable in any situation, as is what Yogananda is reminding, that one who can remain unshaken amid the crash of breaking worlds, he is a yogi. And then how can he be fearful? To what degree fear can affect such a person who has become a supreme yogi, who will always remain unshakable? I don't think any kind of fear can affect him. So that point is really wonderful because we may we may sometimes feel that how we can deal with the fear, or sometimes we may justify, our mind can justify so many different kinds of fears. But Yogananda gives us a very clear and a simple approach, and he ties it with the Bhagwad Gita principles and tries to tell us that. And also he says that it is because of the evil, to the degree our mind is getting affected by the evil, he said, to that degree those negative vibrations will affect us. And fear is nothing but one of the negative vibrations. And he also says at one point that one day you will have to get rid yourself of all kinds of evil, then why not now? And this is also reminds me of the story of Buddha during his last days. His disciples, they were all coming to him to give to him the last message, he said. And his last message was very simple. He did not talk about of all his teachings. He just said that only man can uplift himself. And that also brings us to the point of self-effort, which is reminded in this shloka, that you will have to make an effort to uplift your mind, and that can't be done by any other outer agency. We will have to do it. We will have to do all these 5 and the 6th thing every day and bring it into practice. And that is what Yogananda is saying in his last few lines here, that no one else can save you. You are your own savior. As soon as you realize that I am light itself, darkness was never meant for me, and it can never cover the light of my soul. So with those words, friends, we will conclude this satsang. And let's